Hey everybody, it's Brad Tilton. I'm a developer advocate with the developer program here at ServiceNow, and I'm going to talk to you a little bit today about how to get started with the Now Experience framework, creating your first component. So we'll take a look at what you need for Node and NPM, how to install the Now CLI, and then how to get going creating your first component through the command line. It can seem kind of intimidating at the beginning, and it did to me the first time I did that. But once you get the hang of it, it is not too bad. So the first thing I'm going to do is check my Node version. And one thing you'll notice is that my Node version is 12.16.1, which is this version that we say is supported here. We generally are supporting the latest LTS version of Node, so that's the long-term support version. I've got 12.16.1 here, and then for NPM, my version is 6.14.2, so it's a little different than the version listed, but this is still okay. This is the LTS version. So this is the first area where people run into some issues when trying to install the CLI, is they may not have the right version of Node or NPM. So I've got my Now CLI installed already. I have been doing some things with it already, but let's take a look at the Now CLI version here, which is version 18. Quick note, version 18 only works against Paris instances at the moment. Version 17 works against Orlando, and there are some reasons for that. Moving forward, our goal is that the newest version of the Now CLI will work against the latest release, but also be backwards compatible to the other releases. But right now, 18 is for Paris, 17 is for Orlando. All right, so I've switched to my VS Code window here. I'm going to open up a folder that I have created specifically for this demo. I've got a components folder that I list all of my components. A couple of these components actually work, but I'm going to click into my first component. So this is an empty folder, an empty directory that I've created for this demo. And we've got my first component. I'm going to open up my code window, and we'll make everything a little bigger here. So I'm opening up my code window here, and let's make sure that I can run a Now CLI. So we're going to run a help command and see what can I do with this Now CLI stuff. So I've got a few different commands. I have a login command. So this is how I connect my Now CLI to an instance. I have a logout command, which is how I disconnect from an instance. I have not really needed to do this much because I just log into a different instance most of the time. I have a project command that will be running, which scaffolds a project for me, and then develop is going to actually test and run my component. So the first thing I'm going to do is connect to an instance. So I'm going to run Now CLI login, and we can see, well, let's see what we have for login. So for login, I need to pass it a host. So we have to connect to an instance. I have to tell it how I want to authenticate, and then I have to actually authenticate. All right, so let's go ahead and connect to an instance. So I'm going to do Now CLI. Login, we're going to use host is my instance name. This is my employee instance. My method is going to be basic auth. My username is Brad, and my password is and let's connect. So it's checking my connection. It is a Paris instance, so that's good. And we have connected to the instance. So the next thing I need to do is create a project. So this is scaffolding a new project. So I'm going to run this command. It's going to give me a whole bunch of folders and do some different things. And then we'll kind of be able to look at it. So let's go now-cli project. And then I need to give it a name. Whoop. And for my personal stuff, I'm going to give it my initials, and then I'm going to say my first component. You can give it a description. You can set the scope specifically here. It's going to try to set the scope automatically based on what I've named it. And then you can also say, hey, I want to run all of this offline. I don't want you to create a scope in my instance or look at my instance yet. If you run offline, then you have to specify a scope here. So I am just a little bit lazy, so I'm going to only do what I have to do here. I'm gonna hit enter, and it's gonna come through and run some things. You'll see over on the left here, it's going to create some scaffolding for this component. And it is a success. I have my pink success message. My component has been created. And now I need to install dependencies. So I'm going to go ahead and install dependencies running npm I. And if this takes forever, we'll cut part of this out. All right, we have installed our dependencies here. So now let's take a look in here, and we can see what it has given me. So I'm going to have an index that has my component. So at the very basic level, this is what I have in my component here. So we're importing some things. We have the create custom element, and then I have a view here. So this is what this is going to return. And then I'm going to just type in my component worked. And we'll save this. Now we're going to run a local develop. So this is going to develop my component locally, and it'll run it so I can go look at it in the browser. And then I'm going to say --o, and that's going to automatically open a tab. So it's running the component locally. It's going to do a build and compile it. This is normal, so it connected to my instance, and we'll see what happens here. All right, so this is that browser window that we saw earlier, and we can see, hey, my component worked. So my component rendered, and it is currently running. You can see that it's compiled. So if I come in here and say, now I made a change, and then save it, it's going to recompile. And if I look over here, it has updated it and said, now I made a change. So obviously this is not super useful as a component that you're going to deploy to workspace, but this is the way to get started, and we have some more enablement that we will link to in the blog post that this video is embedded in. Thanks.